Without further ado, we'll have Mike Wallace. So Mike is the past manager of the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in Nebraska, and also has his own operation. And I'll let him tell more about himself.
Am I on? I think I'm on.
You're on.
Hey.
Can everybody hear?
Can y'all hear me? I could probably talk loud enough without it. Ron, okay. Ron Gibson had called some time ago and asked me if I'd be on the program. And I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, just tell us about how you got where you're at today. I was born in 1946 in Ohio. Raised on a small family dairy operation. When I was 5 years old, my daddy brought home a bummer lamb. He had a town job. My mom did all the milking, and the kids did all the feeding and stuff. Brought home a bummer lamb for me to raise. I raised lamb, and I fell in love with sheep. By the time I got out of high school, just before I went to Vietnam on the senior trip, I had 100 ewes. Purebred Dorset ewes. I shouldn't go into that. Bring a tear to my eye. Anyway, from Ohio to Kentucky, Vietnam, Kentucky to Illinois. I spent 5 years at the University of Illinois managing and doing research at the Dixon Springs Agricultural Center in the early, mid-1970s. Starting in 78, I was the sheep operations manager. Not the whole place, just the sheep operations manager at the Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center, Nebraska, and I retired in 2012. So that should take care of about 5 minutes, and I suppose I got another 55 minutes left to go, and I'm out of jokes. This is what we do now. Around the world back in 1994, it's published, John Walker, the Sheep Research Journal, evaluated, it was the multi-species grazing, the ecological advantage. And it showed the dietary preferences of cattle, sheep, and goats. You can see cattle prefer the grass, lower circle. Goats prefer the browse or some overlap in the middle. The sheep prefer some of each. So there's the different species have different dietary preferences for range management purposes or pasture utilization. Conclusions from that study, and this is from all around the world. Moderate stock range lambs add 1 ewe for every cow. You can add 1 ewe for every cow without negatively affecting the performance of the primary species cattle, nor negatively impacting the sustainability of range resource. Cattle grazed in combination with sheep had gains average 6% higher than cattle grazed alone. That's on average. Sheep grazed with cattle had gains that averaged 30% higher than sheep grazed alone. Many different environments. This is our operation, wife and I, family. Located in Duckles County, Nebraska, it's about 90 miles west of Lincoln. I don't know how far, it's about 4 hours that direction, I think, north of here, northwest of here. 30 miles north Kansas border, 24 inches of rainfall. What we operate is it's a pasture-based 12-month grazing program. Not sure what I got on there. Our target numbers are 40 mama cows, about 230 ewes, and 40 nannies. The objective is to make maximum use of the range lamb, 12-month grazing as much as we can, and minimum use of mechanically produced harvested feedstuffs. It's a total of about 400 acres in 2 different tracts, quarter section in one place and 240 in other places. There's 17 acres of abandoned cattle feedlots included in there. Of the 400 acres, roughly half of it, almost half of it, was native range, which is tall grass, similar to here. Big blue stem Indian grass, side oats, grama, some shorter grasses too. And there was about 200 acres of cropland. We purchased that in the mid-90s. We built a house on it, moved, and we started operating it in about year 2000. We built a house and moved down there and sold the old place and bought some more land. That's the other quarter with place we did live at. And we planted all that crop ground back to grass. Very diverse mixtures of grasses and forbs, etc. The land has 2 sets of pastures, permanently divided into at least 31 different paddocks. Actually more paddocks than that now, it's a little out of date. Total of 31 paddocks over the 2 places. Paddocks are rotationally grazed. I maintain, I've taken some holistic management training courses. I used Ralph Tate, wrote a holistic planned grazing book. He didn't write the book, but he took that book and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And since 2012, I've kept track of all my grazing on all these pastures on that spreadsheet. Been extremely valuable to reduce my use of hay, the reliance on any hay, and make optimum use, sustainable use of the pasture. The overall right objective is using multi-species grazing to help preserve a little piece of prairie and an expanding sea of corn and soybeans. I don't know, when that corn went to $5 a bushel, how many thousands of acres within 5 miles of me got plowed up, and they're filling up the Gulf of Mexico with it right now. Just went down last week, a bunch of it. I just soon not happen to my family's land. What we sell are commercial feeder calves, straight off the mamas. Ethnic sized lambs, 55 to 75 pound lambs straight off a pasture in the fall, and commercial kid goats. 40 head of mama cows, and you guys aren't interested in mama cows. First calf heifers, it says on here, first calf heifers, we keep them in dry lot through the wintertime. This year I did not. I had really good fall rain, so I put them out and left them roaming with their mamas. And we just got them in last week to wean them, get them out of the way for the mama started calves. There were 6 of them we kept, 7 of them we kept. There's 3 of them that obviously weren't weaned. They didn't think they were weaned, their mama didn't wean, but the other ones looked like they were self-weaned, whatever that means. They look fine, a lot cheaper than putting them in a lot all winter. That's the replacement. Mature cows, cattle on pasture, starting April 15th. We sell the calves, I'm not sure what this says on here, we sell the calves early December sometime, straight off the mama. Used to wean them in background for 30 days, and I'd sell them at Belleville, Kansas, and I'd watch them go through the ring. This would be in January, and give them all the shots and everything, and put them in there and fed them some for at least 30 days or more, and sell them the next calendar year for tax purposes. And I'd watch them go through there, and I see what I get. Now, I've got pretty good prices for them. And then somebody else would have some, these just weaned off the cow. They'd bring the same price mine were. I don't think I was getting paid for that backgrounding, so we quit doing that, for whatever that means. Everybody tell you it's the other way around, but in our case it was not. I watched it several years before I made a decision to do this. My wife likes cattle a lot more than what I do. I'm a sheep man. She likes cattle a lot more, so she don't like me to do anything to mistreat them cows, including them calves. So I had a hard time I had to show her enough times that, hey, it's not going to make any difference. We'll get the same amount of money. Cattle diversify income sources. I believe they help deter some predation. I believe that under our situation. And it's saying they're going to take care of it. I'm just saying they help deter it. I think in our situation, they're beneficial for range and pasture sustainability, because cattle like those big native tall grasses. And did you ever notice cows, every time they stick their foot down, if there's any mud, they sink that deep, or that deep, and they make a bare spot. And it comes up in that bare spot, a weed, or what everybody calls a weed, a forb. Now that forb then competes with that grass, right? And cows don't like those forbs usually, generally speaking. They prefer more of the grass, right? Saw the earlier second slide I had up there. Anyway, they make that forb, and that forb, people go through and spray them. Airplanes, pastures, get rid of those forbs and things, control them. Well, they're actually making sheep feed. So from my standpoint, I believe cattle are sustainable, beneficial for the grazing pastures, sustainability, especially for the sheep, because that footprint is making a forb, an annual plant that sheep will eat, that sheep prefer to eat, that cattle don't prefer to eat. Anyway, help control pasture parasite contamination, and they're easily economically dispersed in droughts, as long as I can get them past my wife to get them on the trailer, because I can buy back into them. They're plentiful around. Sheep, we run Romanoff, White Dorper, St. Croix composite ewes. This started off that purebred Dorsets I said I had until sometime after my son left. We kind of got out of those. I had transitioned those over by, I worked at the research center, and I oversaw the importation of the Romanoffs in the mid-'80s. And I saw what the Romanoffs were. And I saw what the Romanoffs could do. So fairly early on, and I couldn't get them from there, but I got them from a net friend of mine who had imported them from Canada, lived up by Broken Bow. I don't remember, it was 15 or 16 head of purebred Romanoff ewes. And I breed them to Dorset bucks, kept the daughters back, made commercial ewes, half Dorset, half Romanoff ewes, lamb-making machines. Lamb-making machines. There is nothing more of a lamb-making machine than a half Romanoff ewe. I don't care what anybody says. That's fact. And I've seen a lot of them. Anyway, so I was running these half Dorset, half Romanoff ewes, and kept the Romanoff moms around. I had Dorset ewes, and I had my own Dorset bucks. I was making the reciprocal crosses. When was it? Long about, my son used to do the shearing after I got too old and too lazy. Then he had to go to the Army and left. And for the next couple of years, I decided I was too old and too lazy to even start shearing again. So I hired shearing done. I remember one year I took off 2 days' time to assist the shearers. I don't remember one or two, it's just one shear at that time, it's 2 days. Shearing, I took care of the wool and brought sheep in and everything else. And sold the wool, and I got, I don't remember exactly what year, like 2005 or 6, probably about 2006 or something like that. When did you leave? 2005? So it's probably 2006 or 2007. I sold my wool, got 29 cents a pound for it. And that was the better end of the wool. I mean, this is, now granted, this is half Romanoff wool, but there's a lot of that wool there's nothing wrong with. There's no color in it, not those half Dorset, half Romanoffs, and most of that, very little Kemp in it. It was actually, anyway, the going rate for wool, medium wools that time was 29 to probably 45 or 50 cents a pound. I'm driving down Burlington in Hastings, Nebraska. About a week later, there's a place where they buy used aluminum beer cans. And used aluminum beer cans were 45 cents a pound. And I said, self, it's a lot more fun to make used aluminum beer cans than it is to shear sheep for 29 cents a pound wool. And I was working with Craig Lymaster at the time, and I don't know, I was talking to him. Craig Lymaster was the lead geneticist at the time out at the Animal Research Center. And he suggested, why don't you just get some hair ewes and put on those half Dorset, half Romanoff commercial ewes, keep the daughters back, and get out of the wool business, and get into the true lamb business, making lambs. And so that's what I did. So I sent to Texas, Clinton Hodges, Sterling City, Texas. I knew him. I'd seen his sheep. And I had him ship me up some Dorkroyd bucks. And I put on those half Dorset, half Romanoff ewes. I kept the daughters back. And I got, progressively, I got whatever kind of half Romanoff, half St. Croix or half Dorp Croix or half white Dorper I could get, and reciprocally kept going on. At this point in time, I've got probably what would that be, 15, 30 seconds or 31, 64. They'll never be half Romanoff, but they're as close to half Romanoff as I can get them without going out and buying ewes, and I'm not going to do that because all my ewes are adapted to my management, my environment. These ewes are lambs starting May 5th every year. They're usually done by May 24th. I separate them away from the cattle by May 5th, usually on May 4th. So they lamb in a paddock separate from the cattle or any other stock. As soon as they're done lambing, they go back with the cows. Lambs and ewes, I don't handle the lambs and ewes, generally speaking. Let's pick up deads and I keep track of them. I do that religiously until August. So all the lambs are intact, buck lambs, and these are half Romanoff buck lambs. If you've ever been around half Romanoff or any kind of Romanoff, I remember the first time I had that happening. This was when I was at the research center. We probably had about 400 purebred Romanoff ewes. And they got weaned when they were 60 days old. And there was one buck lamb. I swear to God, it was one buck lamb that had gotten missed, was in with the ewe pen instead of being the buck pen. I don't know how many hundreds of 8-month-old Romanoff ewe lambs we had that were lambing and having singles and twins and even occasional triplets. They were conceived when they were 3 months old by what could have been a sibling that was also 3 months old. Anyway, so I got to get them out of there. So in August, we bring them through. We tag the lambs with a scrapey tag, which pain in the butt to put in. That's the hardest thing we do with sheep, to be honest. Tag them, sort the buck lambs off, take them down to one place and bring all the ewes and ewes from the other place and the ones at home place and bring them home. So they're separated about 3 miles apart. Lambs are sold off pasture in October, 55 to 70 pounds. This is just a picture. This was a new guard dog at the time. This is started lambing May 5th, 2016. There's a set of twins. There's another one over there, but she was celebrating Cinco de Mayo with a little afterbirth. It's Maggie, what her name is. This is quads, set of them born on May 8th or 9th, 2015. Placement ewe lambs are weaned at the end of November and put them in dry lot for the first breeding and through the first winter. Ours at home right now are still in dry lot. I'll probably get them out of dry lot as soon as there's enough green up there. I'm not having to supplement protein on the pastures. Mature ewes are wintered and bred on pasture with the other mature stock cows and goats to some extent. Goats, Spanish boar crossbreds. Kid in April, starting April 1st, right at it. I leave them out on pasture. They do not take winter weather well at all. Even with cover, they still don't take winter weather very well. It kind of knocks the socks off of them. I leave them out as long as I can. This year I brought them in, I think it was the middle of January. So I'll bring them, put them in lots in the middle of January. I feed them pretty good and they got cover there. They'll start kidding here April 1st. We'll work the kids, castrate the kids and vaccinate them, whatever else. Usually when the kids are at least 30 days old, usually in early May, they'll go back with either the cows or probably go in with the ewes. They'll go with the cows, depending on exactly where they're at and how good the pasture is in the lambing pack. When we lamb these ewes on pasture, it's totally unassisted. I say, I don't touch them, I don't touch them. I don't pick up bummers. I remember when, this was before we moved down there, and I was working 25 miles up there, living 25 miles over there, and running stock 25 miles down here. So I'd check them once a day on the way home from work in the evening, and I'd pick up bummer lambs and take them home. My wife would raise them what I thought were bummer lambs. Now, I've been running sheep all my life. I really think I know a bummer lamb when I see a bummer lamb. Wouldn't you think? I sure thought I did. Take them home, and she'd raise them, and they do fine, whatever. And I'm not sure, I think there was a change in the milk replacer formulation. They quit letting you put in antibiotics or something like that. But a year or so, the next year, guys get those lambs up, and he's been fully vaccinated with antitoxins. I've worked with a lot of veterinarians, so I know all the stuff you need to do and everything else. And these lambs get up really good doing lambs, 2 to 4 weeks old, and just all of a sudden blow up and die, be dead. No clinical signs. I think I did get some, I bought off of a druggie, some streptomycin, and put it in the milk, kind of solved the problem. But anyway, it soured my wife on raising them, bummer lambs. So the next year, and I figured out, I keep track of my mortality rates. Now, I don't, overall mortality rate includes stillbirths and everything else through the weaning on those pasture-raised animals going to August was in the neighborhood of normally 5 to 9% of lambs born. So I kept track of that. That's included the orphan lambs or the bummer lambs. The next year when I quit picking up the bummer lambs, my mortality rate went down. In other words, I was picking up bummer lambs that really weren't bummer lambs and probably killing some of them, and not probably, was killing some of them. So I quit picking up bummer lambs. And my mortality rates now, barring some weird thing, is normally 3 to 5% of lambs born, total lambs born. You can already, kid crops sold straight off their moms in usually September. This year we did it in October. Pasture's good enough, but I go later. Replacement doelings are generally speaking, I put them in winter them and then put them back out in the spring after they kid the first time. Mama does are winter as long as I can stand to watch them. Can be a real pain. This is what happens when you got goats and you get too far when you four-wheeler. That's Spanish Billy, Siphon Spanish, Nathan Markham, down south, Kansas, where we got them from. That's just a picture of one of the guard dogs and goats and sheep and a couple cows. Anyway, this is how I winter feed. Well, that came up quick, didn't it? I did this presentation at the Nebraska Grazing Conference in Kearney this summer, and my son John's kind of a computer geek. He kind of warned me something like this going to happen. It worked fine on my computer, and we got up there and got up to this point, and it wouldn't come up. The video wouldn't show. So there's a couple videos in there, none of them would show. So he's got it fixed so it shows this time, but you got to leave that stick in there. We feed, I buy very good quality alfalfa hay. I consider that is my cheapest source of protein, per pound of protein. And what I'm supplementing this time of year is protein primarily. I don't know if you saw it earlier, the dog kept the stuff from getting in front of the bale and stuff, and then the dog's in the tractor with me. Oh, I can't remember exactly what, that probably would have been early March or very late February last year, the year before last. There's a couple lambs in there. I have a rule of thumb that I got to get my lambs worked before September 1st to get the buck lambs out. The fall before that, I didn't get that band worked until September 2nd. And I think I had 5 ewes lamb at the end, right at the end of January that year. And so those lambs are in there. The title of the thing was Sheep plus Cattle plus Goats equals Environment plus Dollars. So I describe what we do. Cedar control, feedlot reclamation, some of the environmental things. That's a cedar tree. This was January 28, 2017, 8 a.m. I cut that off minimum maintenance road just north of the house, and I had my wife out here said, "I'm going to take a picture of this." So that's it. And here she threw it over there. Now my wife's got some boar goats she raises mostly in confinement, but she raises show goats for the grandkids, come to the grandkids to show. So that's what these are in here for. And this is what the goats think of cedar trees in the wintertime. Now, to be perfectly fair about this, I took some cedar branches down to the commercial goats that are out on pasture and threw it over, and they come over and looked at it and nibbled at it a little bit and walked off. But they hadn't had access, they had had access to cedar whenever. These haven't seen a cedar tree probably for maybe, they have vitamin cedar deficiency is what it is, and they're trying to fill it. And you don't need to watch the whole thing if I can get it to go forward. This is the next day at noon. And you can see these are well-fed goats. I mean, that's good quality alfalfa hay, and they're getting fed about 2 pounds of corn a day. But they still cleaned up that cedar tree right now. And they'll clean the bark off and everything. Anyway, feedlot reclamation. I have about, I don't know, what's it say on there? North Place has got about 12 and a half acres of abandoned, what was a permitted 1,000-head feedlot one time. And I don't know, that's probably been at least, what's this? Probably at least 30 years ago was the last time it was actually used as a cattle feedlot, more than likely. It comes up in volunteer, you name it. Kochia, lamb's quarter, amaranth, pigweed, cheatgrass, dock, cash crop, marijuana, MJ. Anyway, I keep track, I mentioned the grazing program I use, so I can keep track of animal unit days grazing per acre. 2015, off those 12 and a half acres, I harvested, grazed off of there, 188 animal unit days. That's 1,000-pound animal unit days. And I don't care if it's 1,000-pound sheep or 1,000-pound cow or 1,000 pounds of goat. It's 1,000 pounds animal. From those lots, that's 6.3 animal unit months per acre with a little over 26 and a half inches of rainfall. The only inputs I got are a little extra limestone here in late April. I'm not sure which weed it is. It could be curly dock, sour dock, or lamb's quarter or something else. I probably won't have it this year because this year is not a drought year. But in drought years, I will have problems with what appears to be it is in reality hypocalcemia, but it's caused by oxalate poisoning, oxalic acid. And if I stuff enough calcium in their diets before I get them onto there, I don't have a problem. Otherwise, I go down there and you got these ewes laying all over the place, and you go down and shoot them up and mark them, because you got to mark them if they're, shoot them up, and if you don't mark them, you don't know who they are. They're gone half hour. But anyway, but you got to be there to do it, and they don't last very long from hypocalcemia. Anyway, so that's caused a little bit of that. I oversee, once in a while, I oversee some cover crops. I've gotten where I don't even do that. Cover crops be turnips, it's cheap enough, because only about 50% of the time I get the rain at the right time to be of any value. But the most important one is grazing management. It's time grazing. This 12 and a half acres is split into 4 different, the original feedlot pens. And when I graze those, I graze them about every 4 to 6 weeks, starting in late April, early May, every 4 to 6 weeks, all the way until usually after the first killing frost even. But I get off of that right away. I graze it and I get off. The other problem that I've had with that is nitrate poisoning, but the only time I've had problems with nitrate poisoning is when I allowed primarily cattle or sheep, even when I've had both. Cattle was the most obvious because one dead cow is a lot more than one dead sheep. In terms of dollars, it's bigger too. If you allow them back graze, okay, graze this lot, and then I move on. Well, you don't bother closing the gate. You let them go back and graze where they were at before. Well, that's fine until you get the right weather conditions, a little moisture or something, and that pigweed or amaranth, whatever, starts growing a little bit. And when it's down close to the ground, and it's got a little moisture, and it's wanting to grow real good, and then you get a cloudy day or in the morning, all those nitrates are all that close to the ground, the whole damn plant. And I'm told, and I believe it, after having seen that once, that is very palatable. Ruminants like nitrate. They like the taste of it. The cow I lost, I had overseeded with turnips. It was in August, early August, a couple, 3 years ago. And I'd let them back graze. I let them back graze on there intentionally because I figured, well, it wasn't as dry that year. I figured I'd trample the seed in a little bit. So I just let them back graze. And before I needed to leave, be gone for a day, and before I started to leave, I tried to chase them cows off and didn't have the dog with me, and it wouldn't go. They stay down there, was out there eating. I said, heck with you, I'll leave you here. Haven't had a problem before. And the next morning we had a dead cow out there. And she had brown blood. It was nitrates, I have no doubt on it. So I learned you don't allow back graze. If you read that, this is some of the stuff that I get from that holistic management spreadsheet. It's the animal days per acre on the vertical axis, and this is over time, years here at the bottom. Those top four, the ones that's 140 to 270 or something like that, those top four lines, those are the feedlot pens over years, if you can follow that. Oh, hey, but this is just a picture of the feedlot pens. They just got moved on to this paddock. Hey, if anybody got any questions, you can speak up. You can interrupt me, because I don't really know what I'm talking about anyhow.
So, Mike, you're not doing any seeding on those pens. It's just whatever's coming out.
I tried to plant them back to grass once. I even planted them in Kentucky 31. I had a couple little patches of Kentucky 31. They lasted 2 or 3 years. And a friend of mine, Dick Franzen, said, why don't you just graze what's there? You can imagine Dick saying that. And so I decided I'll just start doing that. Hell with it. Well, the fescue's all gone. There ain't no grass in there anymore, no perennial grass anymore. The weeds crowded out. So that's just what's there. I assume that's mostly probably amaranth. Oh, I don't know what the date on that is off the top of my head. And I don't know, I think the sheep have already gone through. Sorry, it's another. That's the paddock they were coming off of. I guess the sheep were on. Did you see sheep on that slide video already? You didn't? I don't know how to go backwards. Huh. Well, there were sheep in there. There was head of the cows, I guess. Usually sheep go through the gate first, before the cows do. Oh, there's sheep. I thought they were in there. There's more than that someplace. I'm probably just a bunch more than that. In. Are there some? Yes, there are some.
Who would eat it?
Velvet leaf, I'm not really sure I know who eats it. It's either goats or sheep eat that, but they won't eat that until it blooms. And for whatever, that's what I've seen. I won't guarantee it's going to the same every year, but I have seen that several times. Nothing eats that, and then all of a sudden, the stuff starts blooming and it's gone. So I'm not really sure who eats it. I don't think it's cows.
What stage?
It's pretty tall. You think nothing's going to eat it because they ain't. I mean, it's pretty tall. Okay. Just to find under our weight situations, our average cow is 13. Actually, it's down 1,200 pounds now. But the time I did this data, 2017, our average cow was 1,300 pounds. So an animal unit is 0.77 cows, less than a cow. Our average ewes is about 133 pounds, so it takes 7.5 ewes to equal 1,000 pounds, and about the same thing for goats, does, nannies. This is the title of the presentation was Cattle plus Sheep plus Goats equals Environment plus Dollars. This is the dollars. This is for 3 years, and I got these same figures, and sorry I haven't done 2018. 2018 is not quite as handsome as what these years are, but this is, it's very some. Anyway, this is our major input, first particularly with the cattle and the sheep, not the goats so much, because the goats, remember, they spend a lot of time in dry lot being fed. The ewes, mature ewes and mature cows never go in a dry lot. They never get fed. Under extreme ice cover conditions, I may feed just to feed. But most of the time, like this time of year, I'm just supplementing protein is what I'm doing. And they're fed, the cows and the ewes are fed together. So they get fed exactly the same thing per 1,000-pound animal. I roll a bale for 50,000-pound animal in that pasture. And they eat what they get, in other words. This is the gross income per brood animal unit for each of those 3 ewes. In other words, 1,000-pound a cow, 2017 was $605 to $704. $704 is if you subtract out the replacement heifers, that first year replacement heifers, they don't produce squat dink. Whereas sheep, they do. Well, they're not heifers, they're ewes. Replacement ewes, they lamb that first year for me. The ewes, sheep was $1,926. And you can see, you know, that was a very good year. This year was not near as good. Prices were down, part of it. Plus, I had a coyote problem in one place, which goes back to dog management, but that's another story. Anyway, and the does this past year was, or 2017 was very good for them too. It's 1,578, but it varies some. The income per grazed acre, you can see what that is. Now, does that compete with anything like corn? I don't know. I don't have near the expenses. I got it. Let's see, open season grazing, total grazing acre, that's too complicated. Okay, purchase hay in 2017, $100 a ton. And what I'm buying is alfalfa hay, good quality, very good quality. This stuff is, on a dry matter basis, is 20 to 24% crude protein. I buy the best I can as long as I can unroll it. I've gotten some of that very good alfalfa hay, dairy quality. I use it, you saw the bale and roller. Hook on that thing and knock stuff off it, and you start to drive away and the thing just collapses. Hey, you don't even need to grind it, but you can't get it spread out for everybody to get some without getting trampled. You're shaking your head, you've seen that happen, haven't you? Anyway, our cost to produce that income, that gross income, in terms of hay costs, purchase feed costs, other than mineral, was $48 per brood. Well, $62.34 per brood cow. $6.40 per ewe, and $18.90 for a doe, because remember those does are spend a lot of time in the winter and the spring, they kid inside. Other expenses, vet expenses, ours is, you can read $15 something for a mature cow, 1,000-pound cow, and calf, that includes the calf's vaccine. Sheep, and I suppose it's EAE and Vibrio vaccine is what kicks that up. There's $29 and something for using the goats. I use about 150 tractor hours a year, and I think it'd take me more than 150 tractor hours a year to raise corn on that 400 acres, I believe. And salt and mineral is per year a little less than $8. And I feed the same mineral to all 3 species. And I will mention this, since something was mentioned this morning, just as a sideline. I don't want to mislead anybody. I haven't worn our sheep, since August of 2008. The ewes. I did worm the lamb crop in the fall of 2009, September. Not because I needed to, but because I got raised on the thing that if you're going to raise sheep on pasture, you got to worm them, you got to fight those worms. And I can tell you the story if you want to hear it. We're running short on time. I'm not trying to run anybody late. Where's Allison? 2 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay, you'll just hear the story. I was trained myself with the help of several parasitologists who, the only thing they see is parasites. No offense to any parasitologists in the room. And veterinarians that the one time you have to worm sheep is just for the lamb, especially if they're going on pasture. I would always, my lamb in pasture doesn't get grazed from sometime in the fall until I put them on there May 4th. So I would worm them just shortly, just when I'm moving them on the lambing paddock, is what I would do. And I think it started in 2005 or about 2005, I started noticing, well, I started getting these ewes with ball jaws and slow, the ones that didn't keep up with the rest of them, and kind of peaked in the eyelid, conjunctiva, Fumaccia. You got the Fumaccia train this morning. Anyway, and you could look at them out in the pasture, their septums would be white, because these white-faced sheep. And it was just the ewes, never lambs, just the ewes. And so, about the second or third year in a row, and I was down to that was the only worming I was doing. And I really was the only negative thing I was seeing was this in August. But I was still worming them then because you needed to do that to eliminate that periparturient rise in fecal egg counts and contaminate all your pasture and get all your lambs wormy. So, in August of 2008, when it's 95 degrees outside and the sun has gone off to war someplace, and my wife just loves helping me worm sheep when I work all day anyhow. And you can't do it after dark. You got to do it during the day. So I get them wormed, and that solves the problem. Every time it solves the problem. So I just vowed, all I wanted to do was get through to the end of August. I was going to handle those sheep anyhow. I wouldn't have to do a special gather for them. I could worm them in, which is what I used to do. So I said, I just vowed myself, I'm not going to worm again until I see clinical signs. And then I'll worm. And so coming along April, May the next year, I didn't worm. And August, I went out there, I looked. There aren't any wormy sheep. And what's that been? 10 years ago plus now. I still go out in August and look, and I don't see any wormy sheep. So if I don't see clinical signs, I'm not going to worm. Now, I do a lot of things which would preclude them getting wormy, but those things did not change in 2008. Essentially the same programs, pasture management, mixture of species, etc., was the same pre-2008 as it has been since then.
What happened to that wormy ewe you see in the fall?
Say it again?
What happened to that wormy ewe you used to see in the fall?
I used to see in the fall?
Yeah, in August.
Oh, no, she was, well, she didn't die. I warned her. She probably got better. She probably sold by now. She died of old age, nothing else. I did not cull, if that's what you're asking. No, I did not cull for that. Cull ewes ain't worth shit. I mean, be honest, a live ewe that might produce a live lamb is worth money to me because I don't have much expenses in them. That lamb's worth way more than what that ewe is. So if she's going to have a lamb next year and do it on her own, that's fine with me. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. No, I did not cull. I didn't show him the trailer. Anyway, any questions on this, or I got sidetracked off of that? Sorry.
So you just changed that one thing, but you're doing a lot of things right with 31 paddocks on that.
Yeah, you betcha. You betcha. But the one thing I changed, I absolutely am convinced that if you want normal sheep, this somebody else taught, very intelligent. what's his name? Ohio State University, extension veterinarian, said this first time Craig had him out when I still worked at the research center. Normal sheep have worms. And they had worms before Valbazin or Panicure or any of those other things were invented. And no, they didn't all die. I absolutely am convinced under my situation that I was setting those ewes up to get wormy in 3 or 4 months because I disrupted their internal environment, which there's a certain number of worms of different species in there, and they're each controlling each other. And the one that supposedly responds in terms of population the quickest is Ammonchus contortus, which is the one that gives you bottle jaw. I'm not a parasitologist, so don't believe a word I'm telling you. I'm full of crap. But it's an observation. And I still go out in early August saying, where's them wormy sheep at? And it hasn't happened. Sir?
You want to mention copper toxicity and copper killing Ammonchus contortus?
Yeah, that's a scientifically known fact for over 100 years, that free copper in the gut inhibits Ammonchus contortus. Now, I don't run Suffolks, and I sure shit don't run Texels. You don't do this in a Texel. I said I feed the same mineral to everybody, and it is a very low copper containing mineral. I've fed that same basic mineral to my own personal sheep since 1952, since that little bummer lamb my dad brought home. And I ain't killed a sheep yet, but I didn't run Texels on it. And I did run Suffolks for a while. As far as I know, I never killed anyone from that anyhow. Did that answer your question, sir? Okay, now we got back to, actually we got back there already. That's what the objective of what we're doing is. So there. The end. Unless y'all got questions, and I've only got 1 minute left.
I have a question on the lambing of the ewes. That's done separately from the cows?
Yes, sir.
And so do you have a determined, so you've had 240 ewes, right?
230 ewes is the target number.
Do you have a determined number that you put in each paddock at lambing time, or do you keep them all together?
No, I've got a property that's 160 acres there, and about 3 miles away it's 240 acres. And I run literally separate bands, cows and sheep and goats, on the 2 different places. I do some shuffling, especially cows, back and forth, and when I wean lamb. So those roughly 90, 100 head of ewes that's on this quarter section, they've got 1 paddock they go to, and roughly 130 head of ewes or so on the 240 acres has got their lambing paddock that they go to.
And they stay in that paddock till they're finished, or do you move them?
I, generally speaking, I leave them there until about until I think they're done. But if the pasture gets too short, it's about a 19-day period, and usually 95% of them are done lambing, and then I'd move them on. And the paddock's big enough it's that time of year. Usually, if there's decent moisture, there's enough there to last them. Sir?
Do you know what your lambing percentage is?
Count the lambs in August, and I count the number of deads I pick up. The lambing percentage normally, okay, I have 2 flocks. It's 2 separate flocks. I'll keep replacements every other year in each flock. So I keep replacements this year in this flock, and next year I'll keep it in that flock. In the flock that all the ewes are 2 to 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds, my drop rate would normally be someplace between 220 and 240 per 2.2 to 2.4 lambs per ewe, lambs born per ewe lambing. My normal lamb mortality rate, barring some flood, I mentioned the coyote issue this year, et cetera, in that flock would normally be in the neighborhood of 3 to 5%. Now, it's assuming I find every dead lamb, and I make an effort to find every dead lamb. I ain't going to guarantee I find everyone, but I really try to find everyone. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Now, the flock that has the ewe lambs in it, those ewe lambs are going to, instead of having a 220 to 240 drop, they're going to have about a 140 and 160 drop. But I'm never really sure on that because I haven't lambed the ewe lambs out separately for many years. I quit doing that. I used to take the ewe lambs, have all the mature ewes here, and I take the ewe lambs down this place. And so I'd lamb out separate, and that's been several years back. Didn't even have exactly the same cross then. That was many years back. And the first year that I took some off of, how did I do that? I left them down there and I brought some replaced. Anyway, I had first time used lambing with potentially their mothers in that flock. Now I can tell from where the ear tag is placed which flock they were born into. The first couple ewes that lambed that one year were left ear marks, means they were born on that place. And they went off by themselves. And they were coming yearling ewes. And there was another ewe sitting there babysitting with her. And she was left ear mark ewe. I'll guarantee you that was that ewe's mother. That was grandma. Just like my wife goes to with my daughters when we have a new grandchild. I just absolutely believe that. So ever since then, I have the one flock, and replacements go back to the same flock, because maybe they get a little nurturing assistance from grandma or mom, whichever you want to call it.
How do you determine that you're finding the dead lambs without disturbing the ewes? The year I tried lambing in the pasture, the more I left the sheep alone, the better the sheep.
Oh, I agree with that. I sneak out there. I'm no big rush. I can remember, there aren't that many of them, I can remember where I saw them at, and go out later when nobody's bothering or anything. I tried, if there's a ewe with some live lambs that looks like dead, I'll just leave it there and pick up the next day.
So that, your lambing pastures are native, they're not, some of that we saw some really tall grasses, you're not lambing in.
Oh, no, this is May 5th or whatever, primarily brome pastures, so they're fairly cool season brome. But they were mixed native, there's a lot of brome in that country, good or bad. Sir?
How many strands of electric fence are you keeping?
Say again?
How many strands of electric fence? Interior?
Internal, 2. Internal, all my internal divider, the newer internal divider fence is just 2 high tensile wires. The perimeter fences and all the original fences on there is like 3 to 5 strand or 1 to 5 strand barbed wire, and it's got 1 hot wire running along it. And that keeps goats. I have very little problem with that.
How many times do you rotate through a paddock?
1 to 2 times during the growing season and 1 to 2 times during the dormant season.
So when you take them out of that paddock, how do you assess when it's time to take them out? Was it short, cattle eat short, or eat short?
For me, it's more a matter of time. Except for when those ewes are lambing during May and early June, in other words, cows, and when the sheep go back with them or the goats are with them, I try to leave them no longer than 3 days for the first time through. And then I slow down after that. I never try to take it below 50% standing material until now. I'm very willing to take, especially the native pastures. Of course, remember, we're a little bit behind you guys, I can tell by looking at the road ditches. So we just barely got some green now, so I'll be starting to be concerned about that. But the native grasses, there's enough residual build up there. You probably think some of us weren't even grazed last year, and they grazed, I can't give you any numbers off the top of my head, grazed quite a bit. And I'll take those down pretty darn short until it starts greening. Just barely starting to green up now, start moving off of there. But I'll take below 50% then during the dormant season. And I think I'm running into other people.
Yeah.